Good morning, my dear audience, and warmest welcome to Impact Webinar, Unveiling Successful Story of Australia's Star Hydrogen Project. My name is Hong Shah, and I'm a Senior Content Analyst from Leader Associates. It's my great honor and privilege to be your host for today's webinar. This webinar is also a virtual session of Australia's largest and most influential green hydrogen event, Connecting Green Hydrogen APAC 2023, which will take place on July 25 and July 26 at Melbourne Convention and Exhibition Centre. In addition to your participation to this webinar, we also look forward to meeting you in person at this flagship hydrogen event, which brings together the highest level decision makers across the entire hydrogen value chains, including Osaka Gas, RNG Energy, FFI, Rio Tinto Aluminum, Sumitomo Corporation, ADCO, ENGIE, J-Power, InterContinental Energy, AGIG, to discuss the latest innovations and fuel your business future by meaningful connections. Australia's development of a green hydrogen project is of great importance for the global hydrogen industry. With a potential electrolysis capacity of 53 gigawatt and 113 hydrogen-related projects across the whole life cycle, Australia represents nearly 30% of the total upcoming low-carbon hydrogen capacity worldwide, which makes Australia one of the most crucial reference markets for the global hydrogen stakeholders in terms of development, investment, and supply chain management. For today's webinar, we are excited to have you here to explore substantial factors that contribute to the success of green hydrogen project in Australia. We will discuss the effective tools used to achieve cost competitiveness, security of supply chain, commercial viability, and other aspects. By learning from the eminent thought leaders involved in Australia's most discussed green hydrogen project, we will gain insights into the full spectrum of their successful project, from planning to operation and application, based on real cases. This webinar aims to provide a platform for a lively exchange of ideas and insights that help to achieve hydrogen industry in Australia and around the world. To make this webinar a more interactive event, we greatly encourage our audience to raise questions in the Q&A box, as we really have an amazing lineup of speakers for you guys. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our opening keynote speaker on stage, Ms. Catherine Zerger, Acting Branch Head for Hydrogen at Australian Department of Climate Change, Energy, Environment and Water. Catherine will provide us with an overview of current status of Australian hydrogen sector and Australian government's vital roles in creating a supportive regulatory and policy landscape to scale up Australia's hydrogen project. Hi, Catherine. The floor is open for you right now. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Holman. I'll just share my screen. And good afternoon, everybody. Should be it. So, hello, and thank you for inviting me to speak to you today. My name is Catherine Zerger. I'm the Acting Branch Head of the Hydrogen Branch in the Australian Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water. I'd just first like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I'm talking to you today, which is Ngunnawal country and the Ngunnawal people in the ACT, and pay my respect to elders past and present. And I'd also like to acknowledge First Nations people who are joining us today. In this presentation, I will give you an overview of how the Australian government's framework for Australia's hydrogen industry, and also provide some insight into current and future trends influencing its development. Just like to just start with, I guess, Australian action on climate change that I'm sure many of the people online today are very familiar with. So as Australia and the rest of the world grapples with climate change, the government recognises the need to take strong action in decarbonisation. And we've joined many other countries who have increased their 2030 zero emissions targets. Our ambition is realised in part by the Powering Australia plan to become a renewable energy superpower. We want to use our vast renewable energy resources to provide clean energy, both domestically and to the world. And as this audience is no doubt aware, hydrogen is going to be one of the key tools that we will use to get there. Australia has the resources, the technical skills and the track record with international partners to become a global hydrogen leader. And this could be through the export of hydrogen and its derivatives to a global market that is also seeking to decarbonise. Or it could be opportunities for Australia to decarbonise its own domestic energy system, including power generation, manufacturing and export. In Australia, there's been significant progress in the development of Australia's hydrogen industry over the last few years. And since the release of the 2019 National Hydrogen Strategy, a pipeline of over 100 Australian clean hydrogen or ammonia projects valued in excess of $230 billion has been announced. And according to Bloomberg, Australia's pipeline represents 40% of all global renewable hydrogen projects. These projects span the hydrogen supply chain with hydrogen production, transport trials, storage projects, ammonia and export feasibility studies. Many of the production projects we know being planned in Australia are pilots and smaller scale, and we are also aware that few of these larger projects that are being planned are yet to reach final investment decision. To help build this new industry and reach our goal of becoming a global hydrogen leader, Australian governments at the local, state and federal level have been undertaking a range of activities to support early industry growth. Our collective governments have commenced a range of initiatives, including working internationally with like-minded countries, reviewing our existing legislation, our regulations and standards to determine whether legal frameworks can support hydrogen safety and industry development, and developing a national hydrogen infrastructure assessment to look at hydrogen supply chain needs such as electricity and gas networks, water supply networks, refuelling stations, roads, rail and ports, and improving workforce skills and training. The Australian government has now committed almost over $500 million to hydrogen hubs across Australia. This includes funding for projects in places including Gladstone, the Hunter Valley, the Pilbara, Port Bonython and Bell Bay. I'd also like to add that applications for a hydrogen hub in Townsville have now opened as well. Hydrogen hubs are regions where various producers, users and potential exporters of hydrogen across the industrial, transport, export and energy markets are co-located. They'll give our hydrogen industry an early stage springboard to scale, which will help support other industrial sectors in the regions. We're also developing a guarantee of origin scheme that will help unlock economic opportunities for the Australian hydrogen industry to meet growing demands, both domestic and international, for verified renewable energy and clean energy products. The Guarantee of Origin scheme will utilise internationally aligned methodologies to measure, track and verify a range of attributes, including greenhouse gas emissions for hydrogen and other renewable energy products across the supply chain. The government consulted on a proposed scheme design in December last year that I'm sure some of you may have contributed to. So for those, we thank you for your contribution to that consultation process. The government's also investing $89.5 million to help the transport sector make the switch to hydrogen, including through hydrogen refuelling stations across Australia's busiest freight routes. And by 2050, Australia's hydrogen industry could generate $50 billion in additional GDP and create over 16,000 jobs, as well as additional 13,000 jobs from the construction of the renewable energy infrastructure to power the production of green hydrogen. International collaboration can play a key role in realising our ambitions. Collaboration can help to accelerate technology development, to overcome technical and economic barriers faster, strengthen the linkages between industry and researchers, build new supply chains and export markets. Over the past 18 months, Australia has been developing a series of bilateral international partnerships seeking to advance cooperation on clean energy technology. We have partnerships with 8 countries that feature cooperation on clean hydrogen. According to the IEA's Global Hydrogen Review, there was a significant increase in official national hydrogen demand targets in 2022, which saw a doubling of global demand for hydrogen over the last 12 months. For instance, the European Commission in 2022 doubled the previous EU renewable hydrogen target to 10 million tonnes of annual domestic production and additional 10 million tonnes of annual hydrogen imports. While Australia was only the 3rd country to deliver a national hydrogen strategy back in 2019, today there are 30 national strategies in place, with a further 7 in development. And our states and territories also have their own hydrogen strategy. And we know that many countries have also set hydrogen targets. In addition, and I'm sure all of people online are aware, we're seeing countries introduce generous financial incentive mechanisms to support industry growth and our emissions reduction. The United States Inflation Reduction Act and Germany's H2 Global Reverse Auction are some of those approaches. But we've also seen approaches broadly from the European Union and the United Kingdom, Canada as well. So just last month, the Australian government, through energy and climate, with energy and climate ministers, announced it would lead a review of Australia's 2019 National Hydrogen Strategy. This review will ensure the national strategy positions Australia on a path to be a global hydrogen leader by 2030 on both an export basis and for the decarbonisation of Australian industries. The review of the strategy will take account of developments globally and in Australia since the original strategy was developed, including the impact of the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States and policies by other countries to support a hydrogen industry. We will soon be opening this review up for public consultation. I'd just like to say thank you. Thank you for your time today. For those that are interested in engaging in the National Hydrogen Strategy refresh and the review, please reach out to that email address that's on your screen, so it's either hydrogen@industry.gov.au or we're in transitioning with our email addresses. So it's hydrogen@dcceew.gov.au and you can be put on the mailing list for advice on when the consultation paper and other opportunities to comment may come about. So thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I very much appreciate your awesome presentation on the great policy and regulatory support for the hydrogen industry. And during your presentation, some of our audience has proposed several interesting questions for you. I'd like to select some of the questions for you to answer. So first of all, I'm actually wondering, as you mentioned in your presentation, I'm actually wondering who will be involved in the consultation process for the National Hydrogen Strategy.
In terms of the consultation process for the National Hydrogen Strategy, so it was a strategy agreed by energy and climate ministers, and it will be led by the Commonwealth Government. There will be opportunities for stakeholders to be engaged through that consultation process, primarily. But again, I do encourage people to reach out to the email address as well if there are kind of other opportunities that you see or particular issues that you want to talk about or should be brought to our attention.
Okay, Catherine. As we all know, the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act will set aside $369 billion US dollar over the 10 years to support the renewable industry in the U.S. And I'm wondering, how do you see the potential impact on the Australian regulatories by the US Inflation Reduction Act?
So I guess the looking at the National Hydrogen Strategy refresh, it is to take into account those changes that we're seeing internationally, including the Inflation Reduction Act. I guess while the overarching I guess legislation has been and parameters have been released, I guess we're still waiting for detail in terms of the regulation in relation to that act as well. So in terms of looking at what Australia does have a number of very competitive aspects. Our hydrogen industry is well developed, in terms of projects and the project pipeline. We have a number of projects there. This will all be looked at in terms of the National Hydrogen Strategy refresh, and also how we might support the industry in light of international developments.
Okay, thank you, Catherine, for your really informative sharing and generous answers to all these questions. And I think it's really thought-provoking. And we do believe Australia will stand at the forefront of the global energy transition with supportive green hydrogen policy put into place. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
And after learning the policy and the regulatory landscape from the national level, let's zoom in and have a further look at Victoria, the state that's leading Australia hydrogen development by advanced strategies and a large amount of hydrogen project in their pipeline. In the next keynote speech, Mr. David Oglesby, Director, Industry Engagement and Development from the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Change, will deliver a speech on building a renewable hydrogen sector as part of broader energy policy. And now let's welcome David.
Great. Thank you, Holden. And thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to talk today around renewable hydrogen. Let me just share my screen. There we go. Excellent. So I assume that's sharing.
Yes, it's sharing right now.
Excellent. All right. So as Holden said, my name's David Oglesby. I'm Director of Industry Engagement and Development within the ENGIE Group in the Victorian Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action. Renewable hydrogen sits within my team. Before I start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we are meeting, which for me is the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be with us today. So today I'm going to talk about the broader Victorian renewable energy policy and emissions targets and how they're driving investment and interest in Victoria's broader renewable hydrogen sector. And then I'm going to dive into a couple of key specific examples around how this is happening. So firstly, our Renewable Hydrogen Industry Development Plan, which was released in 2021, set out the scene for a thriving renewable hydrogen industry and showcased that Victoria has the right elements to grow the sector. As the initial hype around hydrogen has begun to settle, it's become clearer how renewable hydrogen can emerge and where Victoria can play a leading role. The critical areas that we are seeing significant potential in Victoria include major freight routes, both trucks and shipping, long duration energy storage to support the electricity sector, decarbonisation of industry and transition around the gas system, and increasingly green methanol. Helping to unlock these hydrogen opportunities, Victoria is leveraging its sustainable water sources, skilled workforce, and world-class educational institutions. This includes supporting our water corps to explore renewable hydrogen production using recycled water and collaborating with industry and research to drive hydrogen innovation in Victoria. We've supported projects across the state as well as several innovative hydrogen research hubs, including HyCell Technology Hub at Deakin University and the Victorian Hydrogen Hub led by Swinburne University and CSIRO. We're also supporting 4 hydrogen technology clusters representing 150 organisations across Victoria, located in the Mallee, Clayton, Great Geelong and Gippsland regions. Victoria has set strong targets to drive our energy transition. These include offshore wind, renewable energy, energy storage and emissions reduction targets. These targets form the pillars of Victorian energy policy, and although not explicitly focused on hydrogen, are actually helping establish our renewable hydrogen future. Renewable hydrogen has a critical role to help Victoria reach these targets. To reach net zero emission targets by 2045, we must decarbonise all sectors, including the hard to abate ones. Areas like heavy transport require fast refuelling and longer travel distances than battery-operated vehicles can currently provide. We must decarbonise the freight and truck networks as part of that, the ambitions around meeting net zero emissions. Hydrogen will be essential to this. Long duration storage will be required to meet our energy storage targets, and hydrogen can play an essential role in storing and generating electricity. Victoria has a large potential for underground hydrogen storage in depleted gas fields, which I'm going to go into a little bit more detail shortly. And then hydrogen can also offset investment in network augmentation and improve the commercial prospects of renewable projects, which will be critical as we progress towards 95% renewable energy. And finally, offshore wind has potential to bring massive amounts of electricity into the state, enabling large-scale renewable hydrogen production and potentially unlocking opportunities in areas such as green methanol as well as storage. I'm going to dive into a couple of these areas, in particular energy storage, transport and offshore wind. So firstly, Victoria is uniquely positioned to explore renewable hydrogen as a form of long-duration energy storage. Victoria's storage targets of 6.3 gigawatts of energy storage by 2035 aims to bring online both short and long-duration energy storage systems, including technologies that can hold more than 8 hours of energy, such as pumped hydro and hydrogen technologies. When renewable output is low, this stored hydrogen could be withdrawn to generate renewable electricity from a hydrogen-powered gas turbine or fuel cell. GeoVic has recently released a report highlighting the potential to store hydrogen in depleted gas fields and has highlighted Barwon Southwest around Port Campbell as a potential area where this would make sense. The Barwon Southwest depleted gas fields are near existing infrastructure such as transmission lines, gas generators, pipelines, freight corridors, and major ports, which positions it perfectly for storage. The region is also where we're seeing a lot of renewable energy and renewable hydrogen investment interest and activity, putting it in a sort of a perfect position for additional work. AEMO's 2022 ISP highlighted the crucial role peaking and firming technologies would play. This includes 10 gigawatts of gas-fired generation by 2050. This generation will need to have its emissions offset or reduced by replacing natural gas with zero carbon fuels, potentially renewable hydrogen. As Victoria's energy mix transitions, hydrogen offers potential as a clean, safe and reliable fuel source. The second area I want to touch on is around transport. So transport accounts for 25% of Victoria's greenhouse gas emissions. Renewable hydrogen can help decarbonise a large amount of this. Victoria is already leading in renewable hydrogen transport with at least 7 hydrogen refuelling stations built or in the pipeline. We are partnering with industry and New South Wales to deliver an Australian first hydrogen refuelling network on Australia's busiest freight corridor between Melbourne and Sydney, the Hume Hydrogen Highway. Victoria and New South Wales are both investing in supporting to build this project, which will deliver at least 4 refuelling stations between the cities and 25 hydrogen-powered heavy vehicles. The Victorian and New South Wales governments have also signed a MOU with Queensland. This MOU will form the basis of a collaboration on the future developments of an interconnected East Coast renewable hydrogen refuelling network, focusing on key freight routes linking the states. In addition to the Hume Hydrogen Highway, Victoria is home to hydrogen vehicle manufacturers Toyota, Hyzon and H2X, and we are supporting a hydrogen bus trial in Footscray and hydrogen fuel cell research at HyCell. And the last area around our targets I want to just highlight is around offshore wind. So the announced offshore wind zones for Victoria closely align with areas of strong potential for large-scale renewable hydrogen production, storage and use, making them exciting investment areas for all types of renewable energy. The majority of investment interest in Victoria's offshore wind to date has largely been linked with a lot of renewable hydrogen projects. We're seeing proponents coming with both the hydrogen and the offshore wind as a package. Renewable hydrogen production can soak up curtailed renewable energy. This can improve the economics of both hydrogen and offshore wind projects. Large-scale renewable hydrogen production in these areas may also support the manufacture of green chemicals like green methanol and ammonia. Green methanol in particular is an exciting investment opportunity for Victoria, particularly for use as a shipping fuel. Victoria is well placed to capture a portion of that market as we already have the largest container and general cargo port in Australia, and I believe the fourth largest in the Southern Hemisphere. The large shipping volumes and our renewable hydrogen strengths make Victoria a promising location for future bunkering of renewable shipping fuels. And finally, I just want to cover some of the activities underway in Victoria, which is really building out a renewable hydrogen ecosystem. Victoria has made several groundbreaking investments in renewable hydrogen, including the Renewable Hydrogen Commercialisation Pathway Fund, Renewable Hydrogen Business Ready Fund, and a number of projects under the Energy Innovation Fund. These cover a range of sectors from industrial switching and transport through to electricity generation and gas blending. These initiatives support the industry to build this emerging sector from the ground up, driving hydrogen production and creating the demand and innovation needed to build scale and impact. These investments and our ambitious ENGIE targets are creating one of Australia's strongest domestic hydrogen markets, ready for further investment. On that note, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present and just post general email. So feel free to reach out at any point, and happy to have further discussions around Victoria and renewable hydrogen. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, David, for your really kind sharing us a very solid presentation. And during your speech, we've also received so many questions from our audience, and I'm sure that you're sticking to have your answers. So the first question is, I'm actually wondering, what is the most exciting emerging renewable hydrogen opportunity in Victoria currently? And how does the state plan on capitalizing on it?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. There's a number of different areas, and we've taken a very sort of a broader approach around how you build out a domestic market. So we've got a number of different areas where we're seeing really sort of high potential. But there are a couple that I think that are worth highlighting that we are seeing emerge quite quickly, and it gives us a bit of a unique difference from other jurisdictions. The energy storage, hydrogen storage aspect is something that we are really keen to explore in a large amount of detail. We see that as a bit of a game changer in terms of the role of hydrogen in Victoria, and more broadly within the NEM. And I think the other area that we're seeing increased activity and interest is around methanol, particularly around some of the biomass kind of options. So I'd say, beyond the traditional kind of things that people highlight in the hydrogen space, I think for Victoria, the exciting ones are very much the storage and the methanol, but further work's needed for both of those areas.
Okay, David, as we all know, recently, Japanese government has awarded around $1.6 billion to the Japan-Australia Hydrogen Energy Supply Chain project in Gippsland, Victoria. And what do you think is the impact of this project to enhancing the international hydrogen supply chain for Victoria and the whole Australia?
Yeah, it's another really good question, and I can't necessarily comment on the specifics of that project because it doesn't sit within my area. I very much have to focus on the renewable aspects, but I think just looking at it from a renewable perspective, building out the supply chain between Australia and other jurisdictions is absolutely critical, and having such a sort of, I guess, keystone project that is mapping out the supply chain of hydrogen to such a critical user as Japan is going to be great for the renewable hydrogen sector, and just being able to build out the infrastructure to support a growing sector is what we need. These kind of projects to be able to grow the sector, whether if it's including the renewable hydrogen sector.
Okay, David, many thanks for your really detailed answers and your participation. I think with significant support provided by the Victorian government, the state will be well positioned to become a global leader in green hydrogen production in future exports. And we can't wait to learn more about the most up-to-date insights from the Victorian government at our upcoming in-person event, Connecting Green Hydrogen APEC 2023 in Melbourne this July. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
After taking the lessons from the government level, let's switch to the production end and hear from the leading developers and utilities to explore their strategies on deploying green hydrogen based on real cases. In the next session, Mr. Hinton from InterContinental Energy will share his insights on the key factor that has contributed to the success of InterContinental Energy's green hydrogen project globally, and how he has managed to deliver this project at scale. So sit back and enjoy this insightful session with us. Isaac, the floor is open for you right now. Please start your presentation.
Thank you, Holnham. I'll just share my screen here. Thank you, everyone. And as Holden sort of introduced InterContinental Energy, huge privilege to be sharing some insights today and the critical success factors in delivering green hydrogen projects at scale. Now, before I do that, I'd like to acknowledge the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation where I'm calling in from. And I also respect and wish to recognise the traditional lands where our major projects in Australia are being developed or proposed to be developed, the Mirning and the Nyangamada peoples. I recognise their elders past, present and emerging, and look forward to many years of strong relationships and partnerships with them. So I'll give you a short introduction about InterContinental Energy and our major projects currently in development, and then share some of the critical success factors, both which there are internal elements of ICE that we believe are critical, but there's also some external factors to delivering green hydrogen projects at scale. So firstly, a summary of ICE. InterContinental Energy, or ICE for short, is a developer of green hydrogen at scale, using what we believe are currently the world's best solar and wind resources. We've been pioneering best-in-class fuel hubs since 2014, with a portfolio of Tier 1 projects in 3 jurisdictions: Australia, Oman, and Saudi Arabia. So we are headquartered in Singapore, but we have offices in Perth, where I'm calling in from today, London, Dubai, and Muscat. ICE, one of the important things about ICE is our ethos, and the ethos of ICE is doing the right thing the right way. It gives our company and team purpose to focus on optimising outcomes for all stakeholders and communities, as well as collaborating with project partners to deliver value to our strategic investors. I'll come back to the ethos when I talk about critical success factors shortly. So let me share a little bit about the projects in which we're invested in. Here you see the Renewable Energy Hub. It's approximately 200 kilometres east of Port Hedland and located on the traditional lands of the Nyangamada people. In December 2022, we welcomed BP with a 40.5% shareholding and operator of the project. This project is a phased development and can deliver up to 26 gigawatts of combined solar and wind generation capacity. Now, to put this in context for everyone, that's approximately a third of all electricity generated in Australia in 2020. It's a significant project. And it's well supported by the West Australian government in particular, who have awarded it major project status. At full scale, AREH could produce approximately 1.6 million tonnes of green hydrogen per annum. But also, and importantly, the project could be a major supplier of electricity, hydrogen, and hydrogen products to the Pilbara area, which I'm sure many of you know is a major mining hub of Australia. And we think this project's got huge potential to support the decarbonisation efforts of the mining industry. Now, with the partnership of the Nyangamada people, the traditional owners of this land, it's an exciting project for the community, region, and the country. Next is the Western Green Energy Hub. We believe this is one of the largest proposed green hydrogen projects currently in the world. The vast coastal desert plains located in the far southwest of Western Australia's Goldfields region, this hub will harness the untapped renewable energy of the wind and the sun. Now, the project is in partnership with the Merning traditional owners in more ways than one. The Merning have a 10% ownership in this project, a director on the board, of which I'm chair at the moment, and involved in all the decisions of the project and its development. Now, to our knowledge, First Nations ownership of a major project such as this is the first of its kind in Australia, and we're incredibly excited to be on this journey together with the Merning. Now, to be built in phases also, the project has a capacity of up to 50 gigawatts of upstream wind and solar. That equates to approximately 3.5 million tonnes per year of green hydrogen that will be produced. Our next project is the Green Energy Environment, or GEO. Now, this project was initiated in 2018 in partnership with OQ, the Sultanate of Oman's global integrated energy company, and Enertech, a Kuwaiti state-owned company focused on clean energy investment and development. On 10th of January 2023, we announced that Shell has joined GEO as the operating partner to develop this 25 gigawatt project. The consortium is working towards delivering more than 1.8 million tonnes per annum of green hydrogen to accelerate the energy transition both in Oman and internationally. So on to success factors. There are a number of success factors we believe as ICE, InterContinental Energy, as an organisation, which we think is critical to producing green hydrogen at scale. Now, the first is our projects themselves. As you may gather from what I've shared, there are some commonalities around the projects ICE is developing. The most important commonality is that all of our projects have the benefit of what we call a coastal desert location. This provides the advantage of simplifying the supply chain, both inbound in the development of the project and outbound in the supply of hydrogen or its vectors. Our projects also have diurnal characteristics, that is significant solar penetration during the day and consistent winds during the evenings. And I think you saw Catherine's slide sort of showing some of that in Australia. Finally, our projects must have access to water. Our projects have coastal locations that provide this, and with the help of desalination on site, we'll make the supply of water for electrolysis simplified. Now, any business school professor will tell you the people of an organisation is a critical success factor, and ICE is no different. Our team of global leaders in this field with multidisciplinary skills that are backed by decades of in-depth practical experience. We have people from all over the world and all sorts of major companies. I'm just going to list a few, such as Siemens, Vestas, Macquarie, Shell, Total, and BHP, that have had the pleasure of joining us. Everyone on our team leads with a single purpose, delivering green hydrogen at scale to accelerate the energy transition. Every activity, every day, this is the foundation of our team's excellent work. Now, our innovation, we believe, is a critical enabler to success. It's part of the DNA of the organisation since being founded in 2014 and has learnings all across the globe on similar projects. One such innovation I'll share with you is what we call the P2H2 node. It's an inventive modular engineering design that centres the electrolysis systems within the wind and solar fields, minimising electrical losses, where we're looking to transmit the vast majority of the renewable energy in molecular form as hydrogen rather than electrical form. By enhancing our insights on this resource variability, the stages at which energy is transported and stored, it has enabled the company to quantify economic, environmental and technical benefits for the most advanced green hydrogen projects at scale. Finally, our partnerships are critical for ICE and developing the projects we're involved in. They're based on building sustainable partnerships with local and global stakeholders to realise a shared vision of equality, inclusivity and community through energy. Companies looking to develop green hydrogen hubs must become a partner of choice, but they also must have strategic partners and investors. That is why the government's Singapore Investment Corporation are a major investor of ICE, and we're working with BP and Shell as operators of our first two projects. Our partnerships also focusing on optimising outcomes for firm stations and local communities. And this goes right back to the heart of our ethos of doing the right thing the right way. By partnering with First Nations and traditional landowners right from the start of our projects, we help to build long-term benefits that will help uplift their communities, maintain and celebrate their heritage, and protect the environment. Now, while I've shared what I believe are critical successes internally, there are other external success factors that are vital to developing green hydrogen at scale. The first is a stable and competitive regulatory environment. As we've seen with the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States, it has seen interest in capital into renewable energy change nearly overnight. So it'd be important for governments and policymakers in Australia to consider and provide stability and to provide them the right market signals for local investment. Therefore, the country selection and its government are an important consideration in the selection of our current and future projects. And on that note, I'd particularly like to thank the West Australian and Australian federal governments in their support of ICE and our projects to date. Now, another success factor is the commitments from customers and off-takers and the formation of a liquid market. Just like the oil and gas industry, securing offtake provides important market signals for further downstream investment and project financing, which is incredibly vital for projects of this size. Now, to develop the pipeline of Australian projects, the security of supply chain for inputs would be vital, and David sort of mentioned that in the Victorian context. To secure security of supply chains, we actually believe the gigascale size of our project could be a significant de-risker in themselves, to the point where we're expecting, this scale actually being an opportunity for major international OEMs to actually invest and build their own manufacturing and development hubs in Australia, further increasing the investment and benefit to the nation. Of course, with this, we need to attract the best and brightest minds in the green hydrogen industry and nurture talent at a local level. And finally, and I can't emphasise this enough, the close working relationships between industry, government and landholders. It's paramount, especially for an emerging industry. Green hydrogen has the opportunity to learn from the past and do things differently in partnership, and especially with the First Nations and traditional owners. So with that, with this quick overview, I'd like to thank you for your attention and hope I've given you a snapshot about InterContinental Energy's critical success factors. If you have any questions we don't have time for today, please don't hesitate to email the info at intercontinentalenergy.com, and I'll make sure we have the right person to follow up with you. Thank you, Holman. Back to yourself.
Okay, thank you, Asik. Thank you so much for really interesting sharing with us and introduction of InterContinental Energy's global portfolios and key factor of your success. I'm sure they will enable the development of the hydrogen supply chain at not only Australian level, but also the global level. Here, I also have some interesting questions from our audience, and we can't wait to hear your answers to these questions. So first of all, for my ICE project, I'm wondering if there a preferred vector you see as being best for transporting hydrogen to export markets.
Yeah, we've been speaking to customers or potential customers about that for the last few months in particular. There's still sort of the ongoing discussion there, but I think ammonia is becoming a particularly preferred vector for hydrogen. I think the shipping industry in particular is really prioritising that over other things like methanol. And liquid hydrogen actually is still getting a bit of interest, particularly from some of our Southeast Asian potential customers, seeing that as a very viable opportunity for them.
Okay, Asik. There is also one question from our audience named Peter, and Peter wants to know, would a predictably rising carbon price be the best regulatory enable for ICE's project? Yeah,
I mean, it's a good point. I mean, a carbon price would certainly help. It would shift the curve, the curve in terms of equilibrium of price between, say, green hydrogen or blue hydrogen or natural gas. I'm not sure. I would sort of think it'd be interesting to see what the government do and react to the Inflation Reduction Act around maybe being more, I guess, proactive, a positive regulatory policy of subsidising producers of hydrogen rather than taxing or costing the consumers of society through a carbon tax sort of type arrangement. But I sort of would be thinking and leaning towards more what the US has done is sort of bringing in that investment into the hydrogen industry first.
Okay, I think thanks again for your generous and persuasive answers. And I really look forward to exchanging more opinion with you at our upcoming in-person conference, Connecting Green Hydrogen APAC 2023 in Melbourne this July. Thanks, Elsie.
Okay.
And now let's move to the fourth keynote speech session of today's webinar. Please join me to welcome Mr. John Cole, a founder and chief executive at Edify Energy. John will be introducing Edify's green hydrogen production project in North Queensland and how it will tap Australia's potential of hydrogen export with renewables. John, welcome on stage.
Thank you very much, Holland. I think I can't start my video because it says the host has stopped it.
Okay,
Sorry, technical issue.
let us try to adjust the setting. Please wait a minute. Hi, John. I think you can. You have access to turn on your camera.
There we go. We're away. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me on today. I think there's quite a few comments that are similar to what Isaac had to say. Before I get started on this presentation, I'd just like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the lands in this country, past, present, and future. And in the space where, in particular, in relation to their stewardship of the country and their prudent and sustainable use of resources. So today, I'm just going to try and go through a few things. One is just a gallop through what we do here at Edify Energy, to get into our green hydrogen production project, and what we've done to develop it and its opportunities. 3 is in relation to North Queensland and some of the attractive features of that geographic region for green hydrogen production and export, and what some experts think about the market potential up there. And then last but definitely not least, who our project partners are. So at our heart, Edify Energy is a development business. It structures, finances, constructs, owns, and then also manages all of the assets that we've delivered to date. We do have very much there are a list of PPAs that people can read at their leisure. In relation to the image of the sites, the vast majority of the things we've done have been in utility scale solar and battery storage. So we definitely have an electricity pedigree. We've delivered and developed, finance and delivered just shy of 1 gigawatt of renewable electricity projects in Australia. As I say, they're solar and battery storage. And that's just shy of $2 billion that we've raised and put to work, which is just the beginning for this business. A recent project that we've got underway is, and we're in the final stages of construction and commissioning, is a very large battery with Tesla in southwest New South Wales. The contracts there are with, or offtake agreements there are with Shell Energy and Energy Australia. This had government backing from the New South Wales government and also ARENA to support the smart power electronic application, and the way we're using the inverters here, or harnessing the inverter capacity to keep the network stable in that region. And then I think this slide just sort of goes to show what Edify Energy has done. That we started in solar. I thought it was going to be easy like it was in Europe, and the assets were relatively passive, and in this country they're very, very much sort of hands-on assets and need to be managed. So you understand more about the market. You're in deeper relationships with regulators and governments, because we develop and also own and manage. Community relationships are very important to us, and being a very good long-term neighbour in our communities is fundamental. And as we've sort of gone through that energy development, we looked at the development of those projects. We looked at every site we had to to determine which were the sites we had that were best for green hydrogen production and export. And the lead of that, at least currently, is the project I'll talk about now. So we have a project. It's in one of the 2 renewable hub areas, hydrogen hubs determined by the Queensland government recently. One is in Townsville, the other is in Gladstone. I'll show you the site specific, but it's 105 hectares of land, sort of artist's impression of a hydrogen facility and behind the meter solar behind me. We've taken a real developer's approach to this project. So we secured the land, we obtained the development permission for a gigawatt stage project that was technology agnostic and could be built out in many stages to meet the needs of the market as it evolved. So we're not doing high level, directionally correct mapping out of what we're planning to do. We've actually got deep into the development. We can't find other development permits, so consented projects of the scale that we've got elsewhere on the eastern seaboard at least. So for a green hydrogen production project, it's a bit like a renewable project where you need land and planning and grid. I'll talk about the grid separately, but you also need access to water and a route to market. And so we've secured recycled and raw water for use in our electrolyzers with the from the Townsville City Council and Sunwater. So our site, the attractive features of this site. So this is the Lansdowne Eco-Industrial Precinct. It is just 40 kilometres south of Townsville in North Queensland. The red line coming through the middle here is the Flinders Highway. That also has a rail line, so there's good road and rail access directly into the Port of Townsville. There is also a gas pipeline easement effectively all the way to the port as well. So when you're looking to get your hydrogen gas or other derivative products to the port or close to another processing facility closer to a port, there's good infrastructure for that. The 2 orange lines that cross the site here, one to the north and the other sort of on the southern side, are 2 high voltage power lines. So there's lots of electricity that can be brought to bear into this site. We also have up here a consented solar power station. So it's a 300 megawatt solar facility with a load of integrated battery storage that, per the dotted orange line here, provides power to the precinct. Sorry, I think I'll come one slide up. Yeah. And then the water, which is also an important ingredient, either comes from a recycling or a wastewater treatment plant not far away from here, or the bulk water will come in as raw water from the Burdekin to Townsville pipeline. So I think there's 63 megalitres a day allocated to the precinct. So it's in very good proximity in northern Queensland or northern Australia, and the site itself has very, very good indicia, or the requirements, some of which Isaac touched on, to develop and deliver a green hydrogen production facility. We're looking to deliver this in 2 stages. So the first stage is for domestic use only. We've signed a number of offtake agreements. Predominantly they relate to industrial use and transport, either marine or road, and other refueling applications. So we are hopeful we will financially close that project in the first half of next year, and then have the facility operating at the back end of 2025. Thereafter, or maybe in parallel with that, it doesn't need to be sequentially, but after the sort of start of the delivery, our focus is predominantly on export from the Port of Townsville, and that's where we see there just being the project being delivered in hundreds of megawatts, and then ultimately up to its full scale. We were successful on the, and sorry, there's just a little bit here about what we've been doing with Siemens Energy, our technology provider. and some of the detailed work as we've nailed down the engineering, look to value engineering a number of aspects or value out the aspects that are more draining from a CapEx perspective, and improve the documentation as we sort of move towards financial close. We were also successful recently, the largest project, the only project in Queensland, the largest grant recipient under the joint Australian and German government high hydrogen technology incubation funding round called Highgate. So our partner there was Siemens Energy as the technology partner and also investor into the project. And we have a research angle to that as well, looking between two Australian universities, James Cook University and Melbourne University, and like counterparts in Germany, Aachen and FFE, looking at the best ways to produce, store and transport green hydrogen. And that research has a very, very practical application. So the Highgate success was really just a validation of where our project is by way of readiness and the features that we thought made it a very attractive project, both from a demonstration plant and also for its export potential. We're also backed in by ARENA and the German equivalent, the PTJ, which was very, very encouraging for us. So why are we in Townsville in North Queensland? This is a report that I recommend everybody read. Actually, it was produced by the CSIRO and Transgrid, which is the New South Wales transmission network operator. If you have a look, the light green circles are solar resource and the dark green circles are wind resources. And a lot of where the early stage wind went, Victoria, South Australia, resource in Tasmania, is because the early wind projects were there was because the wind resource is very good. In North Queensland or Queensland, Australia, we have loads of sun, but in Northwest Queensland is really a flood place in the entire country, at least on the eastern seaboard side, on the eastern half of Australia, where the wind and solar resource is both vast by way of the size of the bubble and very much is complementary with each other. And when you look at, you need access to a port and you need loads of water and loads of renewable electricity to produce green hydrogen, the CSIRO and Transgrid essentially say, look, we're going to see more green hydrogen produced and exported out of North Queensland or Townsville by 2020 in this sort of superpower case, and we're going to see more green steel manufactured and exported out of the Port of Newcastle. That view is then sort of, I think it was late 2021, we've seen Swinburne University come out with an LCOH study, which drives at a very, very similar outcome. I think there's links in the papers, the slides that you can click to and read these at your timing that's convenient to your leisure. And then not the middle of, oh gosh, we're not coming up to 2 years ago, actually, COVID blur, with the former CEO of one of the Queensland-owned utilities, CleanCo, Maya Schweizer, has, at a conference that I was presenting at with her, I was really quite surprised to see this slide, and she does say it's her view and not government policy. At the time anyway, there was a 20 gigawatt green export hub in Townsville, and the Queensland government's recently commissioned a report from Advision, which basically goes on to validate what we saw as the attractive features of our project, but didn't have the resources to produce reports of the ilk of the ones I've just referenced there. Townsville has a very large capital base, population base, the largest city in North Queensland. There's a hydrogen hub funding round currently at the moment from the federal government, $70 million. Renewable resources and water I've talked about. The community is definitely backing this in and sees the opportunity. So there's good federal, state, local government support as well as community support. And there's a recently the artist impression on the right hand side there, the advanced manufacturing and renewable energy. I think it's renewable hydrogen energy centre at the local TAFE. The Bolly TAFE is actually under construction now. In addition to that, for that part of the world, we've seen, just jump to the next slide, I think. We've seen the Queensland government recently do two things. One, this power line that I'm showing, I'll just jump up. And the blue line here, sorry, these slides are taking a long time. The long blue line here was a power, it didn't exist. I think that's what it was showing on this map. The red is existing and the blue is lines to be built to a renewable energy zone where the Queensland government recently acquired this project. It's called Copper String and committed to build that. Construction should commence last year, which will enable those renewable resources to come into the electricity network. And our project is effectively just where those two lines interconnect. And our site, where were we here? Sorry, jumping around different places. At the site, we have the Lansdowne Eco-Industrial Precinct is the only code accessible high impact zone in Queensland. And the Queensland government has also taken over the development of the responsibility for delivery of this site or appointed the Coordinator General to make sure that all aspects, that all the infrastructure that's needed is coordinated in a strategic and state-based manner, so that we've sort of got all the bulk renewables coming in to connect into these orange power lines that are just south of the site, as well as the site being a significant sort of development or prime priority development in North Queensland. So those things bode very, very well for both us and for creating the ecosystem and hub that you need in the different different jurisdictions. And I think North Queensland has very much a lot going for it. There's been a local North Queensland hydrogen consortium established, and anybody who's interested in hydrogen in the region should definitely reach out to the consortium there. We were one of the founding members along with others. And the real sort of jewel in the crown, as I call it, is the Port of Townsville. This slide's cut off some of the imagery, but this is an artist's impression here. That the channel, because this is the only port, I think, in the on the Great Barrier Reef with authorisations, environmental authorisations to expand, and so as it deepens and widens its channels to take larger vessels, that spill is being used to reclaim land that will ultimately on which will sit the infrastructure necessary for green hydrogen and associated product export. And of the half a dozen new berths, 3 of them have been earmarked for hydrogen, green hydrogen related products. So that's excellent. And then look, on the technology side, we've gone blue chip. We really like Siemens Energy, their depth and the number of places that their electrolyzers are deployed around the planet is very impressive and bankable. That's what we need from our perspective. And then we've got a partnership with Enscope, who have been working with Siemens for quite a while to deliver the project under basically a turnkey. It's a joint venture, but a turnkey solution from the project perspective, which is what investors are looking for, and has a risk, particularly in the early stage projects or formative projects like this, has the risks allocated to the right parties to take them. And the last slide, I think, is just a bit of a summary, again, to be read later for of the things I've just talked through here. So I think we've got a very, very exciting project in a very, very good region of Australia, with endless opportunity, and we look forward to playing our part in delivering and executing it. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sean, for your presenting such an informative speech. And we hope the facilities green hydrogen will eventually meet the urgent need domestically and across the world for emission-free fuel, and it creates new industries, boost business, and future-proof careers. And during your presentation, some of our audience has also proposed several interesting questions for you, and I'd like to select the questions for you to answer.
Please do.
Okay, so the first question is from our audience, Ram Kumar, and he wants to know, has Edify obtained the federal government grant for taking a FID on the Townsville project, and when will it be kicked off, and what is the market for the green hydrogen?
Yeah, so as I said before, we obtained some federal and state, I'll take that back, some federal government, Australian government funding along with the German government under the Highgate program. I think there's a link in the slides for that. And that's really an initiative to try and get collaboration between those two governments, looking at how we produce, store and export green hydrogen between the two countries. So yeah, we have obtained funding from the Australian government as part of that. I think there's 20.7 million Australian dollars and 16.4 million euros as part of that funding round. We are working really hard to finish off some of the detailed engineering that we require. The documentation that we've got isn't in a long form bankable state at the moment. We've signed MOUs and then term sheets with key counterparties or delivery partners or off-takers. And we're working now to turn those documents into long form bankable documents. That the methodology is very similar to what we do with what you do with a renewable electricity project to get it to financial close. So we're just adopting the same approach there, slightly different engineering challenges and risk allocation. And we hope to get the project to financial close during the course of next year.
Okay, John.
Commence immediately.
Yes. So we still got the questions from our audience, and I'm wondering, like, what do you think is the biggest hurdle that need to be resolved to make hydrogen trained a realistic business in Australia, given the current business portfolio of Edify Energy?
Yeah, look, hydrogen trains is a great question. I mean, ultimately, I think we've probably got two challenges across all aspects of the sector, where we're not just having to innovate and create on the supply side, but we've got to innovate and create new business practices and processes and infrastructure, equipment on the use side. So, how do we transition that as quickly as we can? What are the great substitutes? Can we use a lot of the existing technology we've got today, or the infrastructure for the heart of your train, and then you're replacing your diesel electric with a hydrogen electric or a combination, a dual fuel combination. So I think there's a technology challenge there on the equipment side of the vehicle side, or trainer vehicle. Ultimately, there's the cost of the green hydrogen production, and you need cheap electricity for that, and you need a load of water and ideally avoiding additional processes for water treatment to keep your costs down. And then I think there's the regulatory environment, which has been touched on before as well, at least in the initial term. Today the cost of electricity is inside probably about 7% of the price that a project needed when I first started in renewable electricity 15 years ago. Maybe a little bit longer, but call it 15 years ago. And so will we see the same cost, this hydrogen production, the LCOH, travel down the same cost path as an LCOE? No, I don't think so. And I think we're in a very different market and driver for why we're doing this now. But I think we need government policy, either on the carbon tax side, as somebody price on carbon tax, price on carbon, as somebody had said earlier, or on the incentive side as some tax credit linked to the production of hydrogen. So I think there's a technology challenge, a use of existing infrastructure challenge, and a regulatory challenge to drive the cost down.
Okay, John, thanks again for your really informative sharing and generous answers to the questions. I think it's really thought-provoking and interesting. Thanks again for joining us, and looking forward to meeting in person at our in-person event in Melbourne this July.
That'd be great. My pleasure. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our next keynote speaker on stage, Mr. Vikram Singh, Head of Hydrogen Development from AGIG. And Vikram will present AGIG's pilot project that enables the blending of renewable hydrogen with current distribution network And I think this is a future scenario in Australia as well. Right now, let's welcome Vikram.
Thanks, Holden. I'm just sharing my screen. All right, we got the technology working. Holden, can you see my screen all right?
Yes, I can see your screen clearly, but I suggest you to switch it to the full display mode.
I have indeed.
Yes. Can you try to make it full display? Okay, it's in full display right now.
Yeah, fantastic. So thank you, Holden, and welcome everyone. I'll be presenting AGIG's strategy on its hydrogen development journey. So what's driving us, and what are the key lessons we've learned delivering our projects? Now, just for a very brief background, AGIG is essentially a gas infrastructure company. In the East Coast, we have several gas distribution businesses, and in total, about 2.2 million customers are connected to our gas distribution businesses, and we operate in Victoria, South Australia, regional New South Wales, Brisbane and regional Queensland, and in Western Australia, we have a very significant gas transmission business. As we look towards 2030 and beyond, we know that the world is on a trajectory to decarbonize energy use. And with that in mind, AGIG has embarked on its own decarbonization journey. And what do we mean by that? What we are targeting is to inject renewable gases into our network up to 10, maybe 20% by 2030, and laying the foundations for full decarbonization of gas supply in the distribution network between 2040 and 2050. So that's our aim, and we have several projects. Some we have developed, some are in very advanced feasibility stage, both renewable hydrogen and biomethane. So that's when we say renewable gases, that's what we refer to. Just another view of where our projects are being developed and implemented, pretty much everywhere where our assets are, from Queensland, Victoria, regional New South Wales, and South Australia. This is a picture of our Hydrogen Park South Australia project. So we have delivered, it's interesting, we talk about gigawatt scales project in Australia. This is still the largest electrolyzer in Australia. It's very small, it's 1.25 megawatt electrolyzer, a Siemens electrolyzer. It's been in operations since May 2021, supplying 700 homes with 5% renewable blended gas. We also have a very good partnership with BOC, and we supply them with renewable hydrogen, which they then supply to their industrial customers. So the facility is in operation. It's not an artist impression. It's been working quite well for 2 years, and now we are expanding our footprint. We're going to 4,000 homes this month. And after we do that, we go to 10% blending into 4,000 homes and further supply renewable hydrogen to BOC for mobility and other uses. So it's been a really important project, and we've learned a lot of lessons in delivering a small project, but still the largest electrolyzer. And that has really given us the confidence of then developing much larger projects. because to achieve 10% renewable hydrogen, we're looking at a gigawatt of electrolysis to achieve our target. And we are well and truly on track to deliver that project, to deliver on that ambition. I'll talk to you about our second project, which is Hydrogen Park Murray Valley, which is a 10 megawatt project, which we are developing in Wodonga. It's located, co-located with the Wodonga wastewater treatment plant. So there are lots of synergies with the wastewater, oxygen, and biomethane as well. It's going to do 10% blending for 40,000 customers in the regional towns of Wodonga and Albury. So it's a very significant project for us. It demonstrates gas blending or hydrogen blending at scale. And I'm glad to say that hopefully this month or early next month, we can announce our FID. And then we expect the project to reach commercial operations in Q1 2025. So once this is in operation, this will be the largest electrolyzer. Right now it's 1.25 megawatt. Hopefully in 2025, it's 10 megawatts. This is the project site, so it's a really good site. And we're really excited to have Northeast Water very engaged and very supportive of our project. So one of the things that we talk about the successful deployment of these projects, it's really getting the support of the community and our key stakeholders. That has been a really important lesson when we were delivering Hype SA. We did extensive stakeholder and community engagement, and the community were really supportive, and that is the reason we were able to deliver our project in Adelaide. And as we extend that project from 700 homes to 4,000 plus homes, the community is really excited to get a renewable gas delivered to them. We took the similar approach in Wodonga Albury, where we did extensive community and stakeholder engagement, not only to the broader residents of Albury Wodonga, but also with key stakeholders being technical regulators, the council, governments, the landowners, community groups, Vic Road, Northeast Water, Osnet being the local distribution company, all the industrial customers in Albury Wodonga that we engaged with in terms of making sure that their industrial processes were not impacted by what we were doing. And we had several focus groups with the community and business groups as well. So a fairly significant community and stakeholder engagement program. And I'm really glad to say that the community of Albury and Wodonga are right behind our project, including all the local council, the government, and all the technical regulators as well. It's really been a great engagement effort by us, where we've been successful to finally able to deliver the project. This is our timeline for the project. Our journey started really back in 2020 when we started looking at scaling up from a 1.25 megawatt to 10 megawatt. So it's a very deliberate scale up. We're going from 1.25 megawatt, understanding what works, what doesn't work, refining our approach, jumping to 10 megawatts, and then very soon jumping to 50 megawatts and then 100 megawatts. That's our plan. Very much domestic focused at this stage, decarbonizing our network and setting us to be a large supplier of renewable hydrogen to the domestic market, including mobility and other industrial applications. So here we are now in March of 2023, where basically we are ready to go. It's a shovel-ready project. We've got all our approvals, our contracts, our funding, our financing is all locked in, and we are very ready, and we are ready to take FID March this year, with financial close end of March or early April this year. So really excited to be able to develop and deliver this project. But I said that's not where we are stopping. We're developing a similar project in Wagga Wagga, which is regional New South Wales, and that's under discussion and development with various governments and funding agencies. Also, when we are developing our projects, we have a view to becoming a large supplier of renewable hydrogen, not only to the domestic market in terms of gas networks, but also to mobility as well. So we are positioning ourselves to be a supplier to these emerging markets. And of course, if you look at where Wodonga is located, it's located right along the Hume Highway, very well placed to supply renewable hydrogen to the Hume Highway hydrogen once that gets underway. So in summary, I think our success factors has been really, we have a market and the market is gas blending. And what that does is that enables us to get the investment going, build scale and capability. And we've demonstrated that that can be done successfully with our Hype Adelaide project, and also Wodonga and Wagga and other projects. And we hope to have about 1 gigawatt of electrolysis supplying the domestic market by 2030. That gives us scale and capability, leveraging off market that already exists and which we understand. And the other thing is that once we have that anchor investment bedded down, that gives us the opportunity to supply the mobility sector, which has been slow to emerge in Australia, but finally it's getting some momentum. And of course, the existing industrial demand. So we are setting ourselves up to be a large supplier for the domestic market, including the mobility as it ramps up. And of course, through this, it's an efficient way to decarbonize our gas networks, providing customers choice, and also supplying renewable hydrogen to the mobility sector. So in summary, the key factors for success as far as AGIG is concerned is the access to the market being gas blending. It doesn't require negotiations with export customers. It doesn't have the challenges of a gigawatt type scale project. We can start small, build and grow in increments which make sense to us. So 1 megawatt, 10 megawatt, 40 megawatts, 100 megawatts. And we can do that at the back of blending into our gas distribution networks and set ourselves up for supplying hydrogen mobility and other industrial demand. And the other key success factor has been our ability to socialize and normalize hydrogen in our communities where we start blending hydrogen, and really strong support from governments, technical and safety regulators. And of course, we are working with various state governments to get a renewable gas target implemented, very similar to the renewable energy target, which has supercharged investment over the last 10, 15 years in solar and wind. We're hoping that something similar is implemented on the gas side so that gas can play its role as we decarbonize both electricity and gas and transport systems. I'll stop there, Holman, back to you, but happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you, Vikram, for your really kind sharing. And seems like we have so many questions from our audience in the Q&A box. So first of all, I'd like to take the questions from Mr. Robert, and he wants to know what are the challenges you are facing with the embrittlement of pipeline and how you are planning to mitigate this now and in the future.
Yes, very good questions. It's a question we often get asked. An interesting fact is that our distribution networks are all plastic networks. There are some cast iron mains, but we're in the process of replacing them, not because of hydrogen, but just because of safety and leakage concerns. So the hydrogen network, the distribution network is all plastic, and in fact, it's all can take about 100% hydrogen. When it comes to the sort of the medium pressure network, which operates at around 30 bar, even those pipes can take about 10-20% hydrogen. So that's not a problem at all. The larger transmission systems, the larger transmission pipes which run at very high pressure, 80 bar and above, there is still research which needs to happen to see how they will play a role in hydrogen blending and how that evolves over time. But when it comes to the medium pressure and low pressure networks, they're all fine with hydrogen blending, and in fact 100% hydrogen. Our network is 100% hydrogen ready.
Okay, Vikram, another question is from those Chip Town and Rich Bush Warmer, and they want to know, like, what's the max percentage of hydrogen that can be blended into the gas network, and are there any additional risk with hydrogen in the gas pipeline?
Yes, there's no risk. As I said, it's just another gas. It has different properties and characteristics. So we've done several studies on the network side. The network is 100% ready, apart from a few network elements which needs replacement. But for 10-20% blending, the network is fine. On the appliance end use size, that is where the constraint is. So current appliances can take about 10, 15, 20% hydrogen blending. We've done a lot of testing. We worked with regulators and appliance manufacturers, and that is perfectly fine right here. Now, when it comes to 100% hydrogen scenario, then you need to change appliances from today's appliances to appliances that can take 100% hydrogen. But that is hopefully a problem and a solution which we'll tackle in the next 5 to 10 years. But for now, when we are doing blending 10-15%, the network is ready, the appliances are ready, the industrial processes are fine. So it really presents a market which can be serviced right now at scale.
Okay, thanks you so much for your really detailed and professional answers, Vikram. And I think AGIG's project exactly demonstrated how renewable hydrogen production and distribution platform can contribute to the energy transition by offering a multi-purpose carbon neutral solutions. Thanks again, Vikram.
Thank you.
And now let's move to the 5th session of today's webinar. Please join me to welcome Mr. PingYang Li, Senior Business Development Manager of ENGIE. PingYang will be showcasing ENGIE's future project, URI, which is Australia's largest green hydrogen project under construction. So PingYang will come on stage.
Hello, everyone.
Hi,
Alam, can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Okay, let me project my slide. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present the project URI today. So I'm PingYang Li, a business developer based in Singapore, working for ENGIE Hydrogen. I have been the business developer brought to the URI project from a concept to have the first phase currently in construction. So the topic is to share some of the learnings from the URI project, currently the biggest hydrogen project under construction in Australia. A few words on ENGIE. ENGIE is a global utility company, strong in power and gas. In total, we have around 100 gigawatts of installed power generation capacity. Around 40% of that are renewables, over 20 plus countries. At the same time, ENGIE is also a leading company in natural gas networks. We have around 40,000 kilometers of transmission networks and more than 250,000 kilometers of distribution natural gas networks. So hydrogen is a kind of ideal link between the power and the gas energy systems, and is preparing for the future for deep electrification and the deep decarbonization. ENGIE's hydrogen strategy is to be a first mover in the hydrogen market, build up capacity, de-risk projects, and accelerate the hydrogen economy. The approach ENGIE take is to select right place where has rich renewable resources with supportive policy and also existing infrastructures. Then we wanted to anchor large-scale off-takers and build up customer solutions in the energy-intensive industries, serving the mining, the ammonia, the steel, and the refineries. Going forward, we wanted to develop the domestic hubs with multiple users together, aggregating the end users in the electricity, heavy-duty mobility, chemical feedstocks, and potentially use hydrogen as energy storage as well to increase the overall value of the project. And this strategy can be replicated in different geographies and also in other industries. ENGIE has a big ambition in the hydrogen development. The approach ENGIE takes is to position as a developer, owner, and operator of the entire hydrogen value chain. We often do it with partnerships. Here, we illustrate some of the prioritized targets by 2030. For example, we would like to achieve 4 gigawatts of electrolysis for hydrogen production, and we are interested in build 700 kilometers of infrastructure for hydrogen pipelines and more than 100 refilling stations. ENGIE sees hydrogen is a global business, and we operate worldwide. We have more than 30 projects in the advanced development stage. Here is a selection of a dozen of them to illustrate which type of projects we are working on. You can see it's quite a diversified customers and partners and industries we are targeting at. Here the project including mobility, heavy-duty mobility such as trains, maritime, mining, like mining trucks, hydrogen for biorefinery, green ammonia, chemical feedstock to produce methanol, and other renewable fuels, and also liquid hydrogen. Today, the main discussion here is the URI project in Western Australia in the Pilbara region. ENGIE and Yara has set up this collaboration surround Yara's ammonia plant in the Pilbara area. If you can see this solar resources map, Pilbara is one of the best solar irradiation region all over the world. And there is a port, the Dampier port is one of the few ammonia port can export ammonia to serve Australia and also Asia and beyond. Today, Yara operates 0.8 million tons of ammonia plant already, and they export the ammonia over the Asia. The URI project is a multiple stage roadmap, and the roadmap is to establish a new industry, including decarbonized ammonia production, at the same time harvest the rich renewable resources in Western Australia to make hydrogen, ammonia, and use those chemical as a feedstock and also as a fuel, can serve the domestic market and export to Asia and beyond. The roadmap has phase 0, 1, 2, 3. You can see here is the first 2 steps is to decarbonize a part of the existing ammonia plant, and the future phases are including building a new ammonia plant at the same time to scale up the green products output. URI's primary hydrogen uses target is to produce green ammonia, you can also scale it up to including other hydrogen and renewable energy use cases, such as supplying to the mining industry to produce green steel and to serve the heavy-duty transportation in that area. Some of the products can also be exported through the Dampio port, either is in the ammonia form or in liquid form of hydrogen or other chemical compound. The project currently in construction is the URI Phase 0, the first phase of the URI roadmap. Here I would like to share some of the key facts. On this chart, you can see the construction area is surrounding the Yara's ammonia plant. It includes a 10 megawatt electrolysis, 80 megawatt of solar PV, and 8 megawatt hour of battery energy storage system, and the other balance of the plant. The project total cost is around 90 million Aussie dollars, with around 50 million from government grant funding, and the rest is from equity of ENGIE and the Mitri. The project, the concept studied in 2019, started with the feasibility study. We took 1 year and obtained the ARENA grant funding for 1 million to support the feasibility study. And 6 months later, we started the EPC request for proposal, and we take another 5 months to receive the EPC proposals. And in February 2021, we received the WA government for 2 million grant to support the construction. And in May 2021, we received the ARENA grant funding, 42.5 million to support the construction. And in September 2022, we declared the FID, and in November, we started the construction. And the COD is expected in the first half of 2024. The timeline is relatively long compared to such this size of the project. You can see we have been pretty much ready at the first half of 2021. The process takes longer than expected. A part of that is the approvals, permits take longer than the normal project. Being here is the first of kind project in the relatively remote area, has strong cultural heritage, the work art in the Pilbara area. We have obtained a good support. Collaborative stakeholders really made the project happen. I can share some of the high-level takeaways. The project successful factor can be looked at multiple angles. A strong government support for such a semi-commercial, semi-demonstration project is fundamental. We consider today the hydrogen is still pre-commercial. Government support is fundamental to make the projects cross the line and start the construction. The second part is the project set a good example for utility world, or let's call it a captive infrastructure project, meets the usual feedstock industry, where usually the ammonia players taking the natural gas or other supply as their feedstock. Here we are building infrastructure to produce the feedstock for the customer. The project is a success. Really appreciate the full contract with long-term off-taker between the project company and the Yara. At the same time, the project benefited the synergies with the existing operations of Yara, who are operating the ammonia plant, and the hydrogen plant is nearby. So there are procedures, facilities, and operational skills can be mutualized. Meanwhile, it's also benefited the existing operation of ENGIE and Mitri has in Australia. ENGIE has more than 1 gigawatt of power installed capacity currently under operation in Australia, and more than 500 megawatts of renewable projects under development. And ENGIE has a long-term partnership with Mitri in this space. The collaboration among the customer and the equity partners really made these synergies help the project cross the line. Of course, the project in the sensitive area with strong culture heritage, the collaboration with the Murujuga Aboriginal Corporation, with the City of Karata and the Development WA are very important in the permitting space, in the local community support, and also to set the lease agreement with the strategic industrial area. All those developments is a fundamental for the Environmental Protection Agency sanction of the project. It's a new type of project. The approval timeline it takes longer than normal project, and we actually had done more than one round of the EPA approvals. That's made the project process a little bit longer. So for any developers or project developers in this space, permitting and approvals in Australia is an important element you need to take into consideration when you are developing your project. We also obtained a lump sum turnkey EPC contract within the consortium of Technical Energies and Montfort. So those are the key stakeholders. It's really a collaborative approach and creative structures to optimize the economics, the technology configuration, and also the permitting timeline are all heavily discussed and reached a good outcome, bring the project into the construction. We can also talk about some of the challenges, some of that I already mentioned, such as the challenging economics for first-of-a-kind project at a pilot scale. Approvals take time for first-of-kind project as well. And the current situation is the inflation cost increase pressure on the whole supply chain. And the Australian market is a fast growing, but it's still immature. This will have some impact on negotiating of long-term service agreement and also warranty the long-term, like 20-25 years of performance of the system. Here are some of the highlights, but we strongly believe together with the collaborative stakeholders, we can overcome those challenges. That's all I have for now, and happy to take up any questions and to continue the discussion.
Okay, thank you, PingYang. Many thanks for your presentations. And we got a question from our audience. So what do you think has been the biggest integration challenge faced combining solar and BESS with hydrogen facilities?
So the solar, the main challenge in this area has its local challenge. Basically, the site is in the cyclonic area, cyclonic zone D. So to put up solar with a tracking system, with corrosion, because it's in the coastal area. So the project has its own technology or technical challenges. We think we are able to find the solutions, and we have been finding the solutions to implement it. The second element is more transversal. Solar energy is intermittent. The solar energy intermittency needs to be coupled with usually ammonia plant is baseload. There we use the scale. Currently, the renewable hydrogen plant is still relatively small compared to the big ammonia plant. So as of now, is not yet a major challenge. Going forward in the scaling up stage, we will need to find some buffering capability, such as the pipeline. We can use the pipeline as the buffering capability. The third element is more on the electrical side. The solar energy integrate with the ammonia plant also have the electrical system need to be stabilized, need to be firmed up. We use a part of the battery. You can notice earlier presented is that we have a battery system is to firm up the microgrid and protect the system. So that's also a part of the innovation of this project to develop such integration of renewable energy into the usual system require stable operation. And we will also build an energy management system to be able to automate and optimize the operation of the whole system.
Okay, thanks again for your really detailed answer, PingYang. And we also agree that your project is of crucial importance of piloting renewable project from conceptual plans to industrial implementations. And we look forward to having more exciting updates about one of the largest renewable powered electrolysis in the world after commission. Thanks again for your participation, PingYang.
Thank you very much.
And now please allow me to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Lotte Lindeloff, Director of Power to X Project Development at European Energy. Lotte will be presenting on European Energy's featured hydrogen project. I hope this could be a valuable reference for the Australian hydrogen sector. So Lotte, the floor is open for you right now. Please start your presentation.
Well, thank you, and thank you for asking me to join. I will just share my presentation. Well, thank you. Okay, and just a short intro on European Energy. As I started, it's a Danish company that was established in 2004. And since then, European Energy has developed solar and wind, both onshore and offshore projects, and now also power to X projects. So we have an experience of almost 20 years within the renewable sector. We have a pipeline of 35 gigawatt when we look at our power generation assets, and that's in terms of already assets that are in operation and also assets that are under development. And this pipeline is also what enables us to enter into the power to X atmosphere, you could say, because this forms the basis for our production of excess, you could say. The way we approach our project, we have an A to Z approach where we take care of all aspects from, you could say, the first screening, the first identification of a project opportunity, and all the way into construction and operation of the assets. I can dive more into details of this if there's more questions, but I would like to get to our specific project. But just to say, also on this slide, right now, European Energy is present in 21 countries, also in Australia, where we have an office. If I then dive into two of our power to X projects, I would like to zoom in on an e-methanol project and also a hydrogen project. Both of them are currently being built in Denmark. We have taken financial investment decision on both of them and are in the construction phase of both of these projects. The first one, the e-methanol project that we are establishing, is the world's largest of its kind. It's going to be established in the southern part of Denmark, in a small city called Oglesby. And here we will establish an e-methanol plant that it's of commercial scale. We will not receive any subsidies to produce this e-methanol. The plant, when it has been established, will be able to produce 32,000 tons of e-methanol per year. We can actually scale up to produce 44,000 tons per year. But as a starting point, to sort of get our operation profile of this plant to match also the operation profile of from the power generation assets, we aim at producing 70% at the time, and that would lead to a production of 32,000 tons of e-methanol per year. This e-methanol, half of it will be sold to Maersk, who will use it for their first container ship that will sail on green methanol. The rest of the production, some of it is sold to Circle K, and the rest will go to two off-takers in the plastic industry. At this point in time, I cannot mention their names, but it will be in the plastic industry where methanol also is used as an important material in the production of plastic. The production of e-methanol will be based on, first of all, we have an approach also where we look into the entire value chain when developing our Power-to-X plan. When we start looking into a project opportunity, the first question we always ask, where do we get the power from? And that has also been the most important driver in developing this project and also determining the location. The Power-to-X plant will be located right next to a solar park, which we also have established in the southern part of Denmark. This solar park is the largest solar park in the northern part of Europe and have a capacity of 360 megawatts. Half of the power from this solar park will be sourced directly into the electrolyzer that will be behind the meter. And that's actually an important driver in the business case. When we look into the business case, around 70 to 80% of the business case is driven by the cost of power. So in order to sort of optimize the business case, it's quite important that we can source behind the meter and thereby, you could say, avoid tariffs. And that is important even to get the business case to be viable. Then, because in Denmark, we don't have as much sun as in Australia, so the solar park produces, you could say, half the time of when the PTX plant needs to produce. So half can be sourced directly, and the other half of the power needed we need to source from the grid. So in that sense, we sort of use the grid as a battery, because the solar park in reality produces all the power that we need. But in order to get the time correlation to match, we also need to source power from the grid. The electrolyzer for this Power-to-X plant will be of a size of 52 megawatts, so it will be really large. It's one of the largest that Siemens Energy has ever sold, and that will be used at this plant. It will be able to produce approximately 50 megawatt excess heat that is going to be used for district heating in the area. It will be up to 5,000 households that will get heat from this plant. Also, when constructing this plant, we needed to determine where do we get the water from, and that was surprisingly challenging. We have ended up being able to source water from our own wells, but it took a while and a lot of regulatory rules that we needed to comply with in order to actually get the permit to source this water. One of the learnings is that going forward, we will look into cleaning up wastewater or cleaning up ocean water in order to get the water needed. Then also, in order to produce e-methanol, we need a lot of biogenic CO2. And in this case, we have managed to enter into agreement with a nearby biogas plant, where capture, purification, and liquefaction plant will be established right next to it in order to capture the biogenic CO2 from the plant. And from there, the biogenic CO2 will be sourced to the e-methanol plant and transported by truck. For this plant, we have also been through a quite heavy permitting process. We've been needed to submit reports and applications for 27 permits in order to establish this plant. In terms of timeline, as mentioned, we took financial investment decision a year ago, and we already started construction of this plant, and we expect to start commercial operation of this plant in the beginning of 2024. This is how the plant will look like. The colors are not accurate, but I was told that the colors are quite important when engineers work with these drawings. But this is how it will look like. This plant will be established in 2 lines. That's why you can see there are 2 towers, each of a capacity of 16,000 tons of e-methanol. We are already designing our next plant, which will be triple the size of this one, and we expect to enter into operations with a larger plant in 2026, 2027. Another one of our projects is a hydrogen plant, which we are also establishing in the southern part of Denmark. This is a plant where we will produce hydrogen. It's in its capacity, it's way smaller than the e-methanol plant. This plant is going to be established in 2 phases. We expect in this year to be able to enter into commercial operation with a capacity of 3 megawatt electrolyzer. And then already in the beginning of 2024, the plant will be expanded and allowing for a capacity of 9 megawatt electrolyzer. That said, the balance of plant has already been designed for a capacity of 12 megawatt. For this plant, we quite on purpose decided to build it in several phases because this allows for us to test different suppliers of electrolyzers. So we actually expect to make use of up to 3 different suppliers for electrolyzers, and then we can test how the different different electrolyzers from different suppliers perform, how it can be installed, and how easy it will be. We can test how it operates. We can also test how it integrates with excess heat. And this plant will be one of the first ones where we utilize excess heat from an electrolyzer into district heating. Also for this plant, I'm going to skip to the next slide where you can see the layout. In the left side of this layout, you can see 4 trucks. And this is actually how we approach the question about storage and also transportation in terms of delivery flow. So for this plant, we have established, you could call it a movable storage, which means that we would always have at least 3 containers available, of which 2 will always be at site, and the rest, 1 or 2 containers, will then take care of the transportation to our customers. The hydrogen produced at this plant will be off-taken by the nearby Esbjerg Harbor and also Air Liquide. Esbjerg Harbor will utilize the hydrogen for, well, they will actually use it as a battery, because they will, via fuel cells, convert the hydrogen into power for the ships in the harbor. And Air Liquide is one of the world's largest gas suppliers, so they will supply hydrogen as gas for their customers. I think that was sort of high level into our 2 first PowerFlex projects. We already have quite a huge pipeline of coming PowerFlex projects. We have around 6 more projects in the development stage in Denmark. All of these will be of a size which will be able to produce 100,000 tons of e-methanol per year. The same applies for 2 projects in the US and also 2 projects in Brazil. In addition to that, we have also a pipeline of up to 10 projects in Sweden, and we're looking very much into the Baltic, and then also Australia, where we see a great potential for hydrogen, but actually also a great potential for ammonia. So this is where we are at the moment in terms of PowerFlex. Yes. Any questions at this stage?
Okay, Lotte, thank you so much for your excellent presentation. And especially thank you for getting up so early in Denmark for this webinar.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and we do have some interesting questions from our audience, and we can wait to hear your answers to these questions. So speaking of European Commission's REPowerEU plan, and how and when do you think will the EU fulfill its import target of 10 million tons of green hydrogen, and what will be its impact on Australia's hydrogen export future? Do you think?
Could you repeat? I'm not sure I fully understood your question.
I was trying to ask you, like, how and when do you think the EU will fulfill its import target of 10 million tons of green hydrogen according to the REPowerEU plan? And what will be its impact on Australia's hydrogen export?
To be honest, I think it's difficult to say, because when you look at all the projects that have been announced, it seems like it will be fulfilled soon. But also, to be honest, when I think about all the challenges and difficulties we've experienced with, for instance, our e-methanol plant, which is the largest one, and which has an electrolyzer of 52 megawatts, I believe it will take a while before you can actually establish plants with even larger electrolyzer volumes. Of course, it will happen, but I think it will take a while. And just to put perspective on it, our next step in this regard will be electrolyzer with a capacity of 150 megawatts. And we expect to be able to enter into operation with electrolyzers of that capacity in 2027. And that estimate is based on our experience with the plants that we are establishing right now. So I think a lot will happen, of course, also in terms of supply chain, in terms of regulation and so on, but it will also take a while. In terms of the export, for us, as we see it, it's important to have in mind that for e-methanol, e-ammonia, and also e-jet fuel, these products will be easily shipped around the world. There are already a global infrastructure in place for these kind of projects or products. In terms of hydrogen, it's more difficult to actually transport and quite costly to transport. So the way we look at hydrogen as it is for now, we would expect a local off-taker for hydrogen. So as we see it in terms of export, there might be a difference in depending on which kind of eggs you produce. If that, I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you a lot for your great answers and participation. And we do believe it's feasible to and realistic for European Energy to release more projects in Australia, not least because of the willingness of local authorities in Australia to see the possibility of moving ahead on green transition and become a key exporter of fuel for tomorrow. Thanks again, Lotte.
You're most welcome. And yeah, we see great potential in Australia, so we definitely expect several projects from our hand as well in Australia.
Okay, thanks again for your participation, Lotte.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
And now let's move to the final speech of today's webinar. I would like to introduce Mr. Mitchell McChrystal, Commercial Manager Development of Hydrogen at Stanwell. Mitchell will be showcasing Stanwell's flagship hydrogen project, CQH2, and analysis the future pathway of green hydrogen trade between Australia and Japan. Let's welcome Mitchell.
Hello, Holnum. Hello, everyone. Can I just test that everyone can hear?
Yeah, we can hear you clearly right now.
Thank you. I'll just get my presentation. Okay, thank you for the opportunity to join the webinar today and to present on the Central Queensland Hydrogen Project. So my name is Mitch McChrystal. I work for Stanwell Corporation, and my role in the Central Queensland Hydrogen Project is Commercial Manager of development. As I was thinking about the presentation today and looking through the material on the website, I was interested in one of the sentences on the website, and it says, this webinar explores the substantial factors that contribute to the success of green hydrogen projects in Australia and the effective tools used to achieve cost competitiveness, security of the supply chain, commercial viability, and other aspects. And the term effective tools caught my attention. And today I want to focus on the effective tools that we've used to progress the CQH2 project. And I'll do that specifically by stepping through some of the foundations or success factors that we as a project are focusing on to move the project from feasibility through to profitability over the next few years. So what I'm going to suggest is that there are 5 foundations for success. And I think as I go through these foundations, it will become apparent that it isn't necessarily rocket science. And I'm guessing as you look through these foundations, you'll recognise that some of them might apply to your projects too. And I think just looking at reviewing the previous presentation from Lotte, definitely some of the foundations that we've identified are certainly foundations for other projects as well. So what I'll do today, I'll talk a little bit about each of these foundations. I'll talk about why location is important, who you partner with is important, obviously having an offtake is important. For green hydrogen, you need renewables. And then I'll talk a little bit about the importance of partnerships with regional, community and government stakeholders. So for those who are not familiar with Stanwell, Stanwell is a Queensland government-owned generation company. We are a major provider of electricity and energy solutions to Queensland, the national electricity market on the east coast of Australia, and large users throughout Australia as well. And I think consistent with many businesses in this industry, our business is undergoing a major transformation as we move from primarily being a coal-fired generation business to having a portfolio of renewable energy and storage that can meet the evolving needs of our customers. And as a business being in Queensland, we're supporting the objectives of the Queensland government's recently released Energy and Jobs Plan. And that will see our existing operational sites in Queensland becoming green energy hubs over the next 15 or so years. And we've already started that journey over the last 3 months. Stanwell's announced some major 100% renewable energy deals with major electricity users. That includes Brisbane Airports Corporation, Anglo America, as well as the Arnott's Group. And these retail deals are linked to a range of energy projects that we're contracting as part of our portfolio. You may have heard of these. There's the Clark Creek Wind Farm, Bluegrass Solar Farm, and also the McIntyre Wind Farm. So we're pretty excited at Stanwell about these advancements and their important milestones in the transformation of our business. So two of the key foundations for green hydrogen that I mentioned earlier are the location of a project and the availability of renewable energy. And as I mentioned, as a business, we're leveraging our key locations in Queensland, where we have an existing presence, which is central and southern Queensland, to develop our renewable energy and storage portfolio. These areas have both been designated as renewable energy zones and are close to major load centres, have strong network capacity and high quality renewable energy resources, both wind and solar. So our current renewable energy pipeline is almost 2,500 megawatts, and we will need to replicate this by at least 4 times to complete the transformation of our business to renewables. Will also require several gigawatts of storage, and we've commenced that journey with 2 large-scale lithium-ion batteries soon to be installed at our Toorong and Stanwell sites. So we have a huge job ahead, but it's a very exciting time to be in the industry. So to return to our foundations that we're calling them for success, the first one we have as a project is the right location. So we believe Central Queensland, and in particular the Gladstone region, is an ideal location to start large-scale production and export of green hydrogen. For those of you on the webinar that are not Queensland-based, Gladstone is located about 500 kilometres north of Brisbane, the capital of Queensland, by road. So Gladstone is a major industrial mining hub in Queensland. The Port of Gladstone, in particular, is Queensland's largest multi-commodity port and the world's 4th largest coal exporting terminal. So it's a major export facility, which of course aligns with the CQH2 project's export orientation. I think another important point about having a project located in central Queensland is the proximity to Asia. The Gladstone region and the Port of Gladstone has a long history of providing reliable energy resources to the Asian region, which is where we intend to export green hydrogen to. So this slide here represents the basic kind of supply chain for producing green hydrogen in the region. So at a very high level, our project consists of 3 facilities. On the left is a hydrogen production facility, which is where, as the name suggests, hydrogen gas will be produced. A gas pipeline will then transport gaseous hydrogen to the liquefaction facility. And for simplicity, what I've done here is really just highlight one potential transport route. There are multiple transport routes which we're investigating and will be confirmed as we go through the FEED study. And then the final component is the liquefaction facility, and that's proposed to be located at Fisherman's Landing, which is at the Port of Gladstone. So I guess, why do we like this site? Why do we think it's an important site? There are a number of advantages. It's located within the Gladstone State Development Area, which is zoned as a high impact industrial precinct. It's got close proximity to the national electricity market. So what you can see there is that it's close to Larkin Creek substation with existing transmission infrastructure. All that will be developed. It's adjacent to existing infrastructure and service corridors as well that will facilitate connectivity with other parts within the state development area, in particular the port. And as you can see, it's not actually too far from the Port of Gladstone, which, as I mentioned before, has great advantages. It's a natural deep water port, and it's very large. Another great advantage of the area is that it is a strong renewable energy resource region. There's very strong potential for renewables in the region. And also, I think another point to note is that within the Gladstone region, as I mentioned, it's a very strong mining and industrial hub. There are other industries that can use hydrogen, such as use of ammonia and explosives and fertilizers. There's also potential applications of hydrogen in other industries too. In terms of the second foundation for success is having a high quality international consortium. So from a geopolitical perspective, Australia and Japan have a mutual ambition to develop a hydrogen economy. And I think many of us would be aware that the Australian government has set a goal of becoming a top 3 global hydrogen export nation by 2030. Also, the Queensland government has established a hydrogen industry strategy to position the state as a key exporter of hydrogen. As I've been on the webinar today, I've also noted that the Queensland government has sent through a number of media releases also talking about its hydrogen ambitions. So the policy environment is very strong within Queensland and Australia, and indeed Japan. I think given the complexity of the project, the process of producing hydrogen, transporting it, liquefying it, and just the sheer infrastructure that's involved in a project of this nature, no one company can be everything that's required to successfully develop the supply chain. So developing partnerships across all parts of the supply chain, we think that's critical to leveraging expertise, driving down the cost of hydrogen, and supporting the development of the industry. The consortium members that we have in the project, they have a unique mix of competitive advantages to harness the commercial and strategic potential of the opportunity. Very briefly, in terms of who is in our consortium, Iwatani. Iwatani is a leading Japanese trading company. It specialises in energy and gas services in Japan. Interestingly, Iwatani initiated operations at Japan's first commercial liquefied hydrogen plant back in 1978. So it has the experience and pedigree in hydrogen. Marubeni, it's a very well-known global Japanese trading and investment conglomerate. Products and services spread across a broad range of industries, LNG, power projects, and infrastructure. Kansai Electric, it's electric utility within the operational area of Kansai region in Japan. It's the second largest electric power company in Japan, with almost 30 gigawatts of installed capacity. And I guess in context, the NEM has around 54 gigawatts of capacity. So Kansai is certainly a big generator of electricity by comparison to Australia. Kawasaki Heavy Industries, I'm sure everyone has heard of Kawasaki. It is a technology provider which operates across a number of areas: aerospace, rolling stock, ship and offshore structures. KHI is a world leader in production, storage, shipping and handling of liquid hydrogen. And then finally, APA. APA is a leading Australian energy infrastructure business, obviously very experienced in pipeline infrastructure in Australia. It's listed on the ASX. I think it has around $21 billion portfolio of gas, electricity, solar and wind assets in Australia. So we have a great consortium. We have a number of skills and experience. I guess then the question that we've asked ourselves is, what does this mean? What does having a strong consortium mean? And I think part of the advantages is that a consortium of this nature can jointly share the costs and risks of developing a project of this nature, and there are significant risks. And I guess one of the tangible ways that we've worked together thus far is jointly funding and undertaking a detailed feasibility study. And I won't go through the feasibility study outcomes here, but what we've been able to do is certainly increase the project definition of the project, reduce the risks across the technical, commercial and strategic elements. And it really puts the project in a strong position to move to the next phase, which is a front-end engineering design phase study, which will be kicking off in the not too distant future. Foundation number 3, hydrogen offtake. I think this is a critical element of any project of this nature. The Central Queensland Hydrogen Project is progressing a number of opportunities to supply both liquid hydrogen as well as ammonia off-takers as well. And I mentioned before Kansai Electric as a consortium partner, they're also a major potential off-taker for liquid hydrogen from the CQH2 project. Kansai themselves has identified the project as a symbolic project for both Australia and Japan. So it's very well regarded from within Kansai and the Japanese government as well. Kansai plans to utilise hydrogen at their LNG power stations, and their target is to import 100,000 tonnes of green liquid hydrogen in 2030. It's announced plans to develop a receiving terminal in the Himeji City region as well. Importantly, Kansai is leading discussions with the Japanese government on funding support, which can potentially be applied to hydrogen supply chains. So as we move to the fourth foundation, which is renewable energy, I think it's worth noting there are really two key drivers of the cost of hydrogen. That's the capital cost of the facilities and electricity. So I think what this chart shows that in the early stages when capex of electrolyzers is high, it's roughly a 50-50 split, the cost of electricity and capex. As capital costs come down, we expect that renewable energy will become even more like 70 to 80% of the cost. And I think that was something that Lotte was referring to in her presentation as well. And that's really why renewables is so important, why it is a foundation for us. It's a big cost driver of the project. And as I mentioned before, Stanwell is transforming its business to renewables, and a strong advantage that Stanwell brings to the consortium is its ability to procure renewable energy that's required to produce green hydrogen. As we've drawn on the learnings from our feasibility study, this chart here shows the concept of how we will use energy for the hydrogen production facility. So the hydrogen production facility will be grid connected, but will contract with predominantly wind and solar projects for the bulk of the energy supply to the project. And what this chart here shows is that as a general operating philosophy, the electrolyzers will produce at capacity generally during the overnight and daytime hours. And then importantly, when grid energy is at its highest, so during the peak periods, peak pricing periods, the electrolyzers will ramp down, which will not only reduce their overall energy draw and the cost of purchasing energy from the grid, but it will allow the project to export renewables to the grid as well. I think the absolutely critical element of our modelling is that we can provide 100% renewable energy to supply green hydrogen to our customers, which is obviously a very important aspect of a green hydrogen project. So the final foundation that we believe is required for a successful project is partnerships with government and community. And I think what we're very aware of is that there are significant opportunities that exist for the broader economy as a result of the project. Some of those stats are highlighted on the slide. What are the benefits? Development of large-scale green hydrogen industry will drive renewable energy development and manufacturing investment. It'll attract high-quality jobs and investment. It'll create a new low-carbon industry, reduce emissions, as well as providing access to export opportunities. So there are many opportunities, and what we want to make sure is that the community benefits from these opportunities. So partnerships are critical to making that happen. We're very mindful that our projects won't be successful or sustainable otherwise. I think in particular, establishing partnerships with our host communities are also critical. And I think what is probably obvious, but general community surveys are one thing, but actual engagement on a real project is another. And throughout our feasibility study, we engaged a broad range of stakeholders to understand their thoughts on hydrogen development in Queensland, and then also to gain feedback on our proposed projects. And I think the key concerns expressed by the community in relation to our proposed project included the impact on housing availability and rental prices, safety of hydrogen. And I think what we've understood is that there is, or there can be, a negative association with hydrogen. I think what we've understood is that's mostly the fear of the unknown. And I think the important is that the established expertise and processes that already exist for handling these types of materials, the key is bringing that over to the hydrogen industry. Water was another community concern. I think it goes without saying, hydrogen production and liquefaction does use a lot of water. we're ensuring that we're maximising efficiency of our processes to minimise water usage, looking at things like air cooling and seawater cooling, but also reusing water as well. And then also sustainable supply of water, so potentially through desalination. In this context, we certainly welcome the recent announcement by the Queensland Government for the Fitzroy to the Gladstone pipeline. Environmental impacts are also a concern to the community, particularly on the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, so that is something we are absolutely cognizant about. In terms of our timing for the project, we're pushing towards a commercial operations date for the initial phase of hydrogen in 2027. But I guess this is all predicated on continuing to firm up and form and develop the foundations for the project. So doing the work required to secure the right location and the associated infrastructure, continuing to work collaboratively with our consortium partners, Queensland Government, Australian Government, and the Japanese Government. Securing a hydrogen offtake, as I mentioned before, absolutely critical part of the project, and then also firming up our renewable energy supply. That wraps up my presentation today. Happy to take some questions if there are.
All right, Michelle, thank you so much for your presentations. And we do have some questions for you. With regards to the upward pressure on electricity cost, is actually well reported, in both in terms of the wholesale electricity process and the cost of renewables. With the cost of electricity being such an important part of overall cost of hydrogen, I'm wondering how is CQH2 project able to mitigate the impact of higher electricity prices?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Holnam. It's a very good question. I think electrolyzer flexibility is absolutely critical to being able to weather the storm that is electricity prices at the moment. Very recently, we updated our market modelling and our financial modelling to understand the upward pressure on grid energy prices, but also the cost of renewables. And what we've been able to, I guess, confirm is that if you have the right level of flexibility with an electrolyzer, you are able to manage the cost of electricity, being able to ramp down when forecast electricity prices are expected to be at their peak. As I mentioned previously in my presentation, it reduces the amount of the cost of electricity for the electrolyzer, but also enables the renewable energy projects that we would contract to be able to supply into the grid during those high prices, which offsets the overall cost of the project. So we're confident that even in an environment of challenging electricity prices, we're able to weather that storm.
Michelle, thanks again for your generous answers, and really look forward to witness the exports of renewable hydrogen to Japan and supply large industrial consumers in the central Queensland region to support emission reduction for the domestic industry. And now it comes to an end of today's webinar. Thank you guys for joining us today for this webinar on successful stories of Australia Star Hydrogen project. It's been an insightful and inspiration discussion on the advancements in Australian hydrogen industry and the various projects driving the transition to a low-carbon economy. Our 8 established speakers share their insights and experience, highlighting the successful implementation of green hydrogen projects across Australia. Through their informative sharing, we'll learn about the challenges they face and the innovative solution they have to deploy more successful hydrogen projects. Their story has provided us with valuable knowledge and inspirations for the whole industry to keep writing more successful stories that could shape the hydrogen future not only for Australia, but also for the world. Once again, please remember, today's Impact webinar is a virtual part of Australia's largest and most influential green hydrogen conference and expo, Connecting Green Hydrogen APAC 2023, which will take place on July 25 to July 26 in Melbourne, Australia. Please don't hesitate to secure your tickets and join us must to attend the event. Together with C-level decision makers from Osaka Gas, RNG Energy, Rio Tinto Aluminum, Sumitomo Corporation, ADCO, ENGIE, J-Power, InterContinental Energy, Aurica, and much more to expect. Lastly, I would like to thank you for our audience for joining us today. Your participation and engagement has made this webinar an enriching experience for all. We hope you found this discussion insightful and informative. Thank you guys. Bye. See you next time.